Welcome to Alive and Thriving. My name is Jessica Reed. I am your host. I am so happy to have you here listening today. Today, I am joined by a beautiful guest. Her name is Nicole Hydes. And now, before I introduce you and tell you a little bit about Nicole and about the wonderful conversation that Nicole and I have shared for this podcast, I want to let you know about a free masterclass that I am running. I have put this together for women who are really wanting to learn how to tap away their mental load so that they can actually stop living on autopilot and create a life of intention and calm and inner peace. And so this masterclass is going to be really practical. It's actually running live over 2 days. So depending when you're listening to this, Thursday the 15th of June and Friday the 16th of June, 2 different times. If you are listening after those dates, then reach out to me and I might be able to get you a copy of the replay. But if you're listening, Nicole, welcome to Alive and Thriving. How are you today?
I'm really well. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome.
So
It's lovely to have you
exciting.
here. We just had the best chat before I started recording. And the whole time I was thinking, I should be recording this. I should be recording this. So,
Yes, my
Nicole,
mind goes off.
yes, mine too. I have already introduced you sort of with your formal bio before we started chatting, but just would you like to share a little bit more with listeners? Just really, who are you? Who is Nicole?
Oh my God.
Tell me about Nicole.
Oh my God. And it's so weird because when you see all these things written down that you've done, it's like, wow, because you don't think that you are, good enough or done on anything. But when you see and hear the bio, it's like, wow, okay, yeah, I have done stuff. So,
Absolutely. And it's an
yeah,
impressive bio.
predominantly. It's like, yeah, my brain does, but yeah, predominantly I'm a mum first and foremost. It's the most challenging and rewarding and the best thing I've ever done. I'm a mum of 5 kids, 5 neurodivergent kids, autism and ADHD and dyslexia and all of the spicy brain things, and done lots of different modalities to try and piece the puzzle of their journey. And in the process, it's, for me as well to connect how I can support them. But it's taken me deeper and the pieces of the puzzle for me that I was missing. So that is my main, purpose, being a mum. And now that all the kids are at school and he's nearly 19 or nearly 20, it's like finding me. Who am I? I'm not the same person that I was before kids.
Yeah.
And that's a whole journey in itself. So yeah, I'm still discovering and still finding out where I go and what I'm here to do, basically, I guess. So yeah.
Absolutely. Do you know, excuse me, just because, you've already sort of just brought it up in a way, you're talking about the journey with your kids and how that has helped you to go deeper. Should we just jump straight into having a bit of a chat about that process for you of that later in life diagnosis. So let's and I think yeah, look, we were chatting just before and I was just saying how so many people I believe will relate to what you're about to talk about because I know so many people who just, for all this time have been telling themselves effectively that something is wrong with them or been told their whole life that something is wrong with them. And then if they enter their late 30s, their 40s, their 50s, and then now being given this ADHD diagnosis. And for some of them, it's been like, well, this makes sense, but how am I supposed to navigate this? It's this whole new thing. So let's talk about your journey. How did I guess your journey with your children then open up this for you?
Yeah, it's a good place. So Liam, my eldest, he was diagnosed when he was 6 with back then high functioning autism and ADHD, the quiet type. It's like, I don't know what the quiet type is. So this is going back probably nearly 14 years. So there wasn't a lot of support like there is now, which is amazing. So the autism bit, it runs in our family, and understood all of that. The quiet type ADHD, I didn't realize. The pediatrician wanted to go on Ritalin and a few other things, and that's another whole thing. And I like a lot more of the natural. And he reacted. He didn't do very well anyway on the Ritalin, so it wasn't for him. A lot of people can't take medication for ADHD as well. So we had done a lot of, then all the kids started, with all of their diagnoses along the years. So I've been doing all the autism side, and then coming into COVID, our yearly pediatrician appointment, our pediatrician's like, okay, let's see all the kids' handwriting, blah, 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 and started basically on, the inattentive ADHD and what that looked like. And in the space of 10 minutes, I was literally tears streaming down my face. And, we had seen him for, at that stage, 12 years or whatever. My whole life was in those 10 minutes. And it's like, wow. So it basically opened up my eyes to like, okay, right. Doing all the Googling, tried the medication that he prescribed, wanted to. I was very reluctant, but then very open to, think, okay. So he said, okay, you can try it for 3 days to see what it's like. So then you can explain to the kids, this is the process. It's like, okay, because I've been against it the whole time after seeing what, the other did. And literally the next day when I took it, it was like the light switch in my brain had flipped on. I was like, wow. So this is how I'm supposed to function. Like, wow. It was mind-boggling. So I went on the 3 days, and then I went off like he suggested. And then my body was craving it. And it was very, because it was like addictive. My brain was then okay, it was switched on. It was finally being able to multitask, and it wasn't in the overwhelm, and I was able to do things without
Wow.
It was amazing. So that was very interesting, of feeling like my body is wanting this drug. It was craving it.
And so just for context, so you don't have to give me your age, but you were approximately how old with your diagnosis? In what ballpark?
So I'm 51. So this was it took quite a while. So I would have been, I think I was 48, 49. It took me then to see a adult psychiatrist, because they're the only ones. That was a whole new ballpark figure. There's the psychologists and the psychiatrists, but psychologists are the only ones who can diagnose on the medication front. And again, I'd been against, yes, medication for what you need, but that's not my first point. So it was a very interesting journey to go down that in wanting the medication, because of how it made me feel and able to do things, finish tasks, things like that. It was incredible. But that took probably 10 months to be booked in. And this is again going just as COVID at the start of 2020, probably leading into. So it wasn't even like the wait list now. Some psychiatrists are like months. It's incredible. So I went to him, and even though all 5 kids were, he was like, no, you're depressed. You've got anxiety, here's the script for that. And, then we can do the ADHD testing, things like that. But, this is, you're depressed. I knew I wasn't depressed. I know I've got that low level having, the kids. I know that I've got long-term chronic stress, which has turned into autoimmune disease, Hashimoto's, things like that. So I know that I'm a tight rubber band anyway, ready to fling off because you're juggling everything.
Yeah.
But I knew that I wasn't depressed. And, that wasn't why I was there. I knew that it was the ADHD. By the end, well, even during, but by the end, I was full flight in fight or flight mode. I was so heightened that it was like, you don't have, childhood trauma from your ADHD. That you don't have trauma, yeah. And that just set me off because I knew that I did. Everyone's got events and challenges that we've had. Some, as we know, some, things happen. It's not so much affects someone else, but someone else, it's different for everyone.
Yeah.
But I knew that for years of trying to fit in, I knew that it was the inattentive ADHD. To try and get a diagnosis later in life is so difficult. And even more if you've got parents who have passed away or things like that, who's going to keep records from your childhood at school? Not very many people. And that's what the psychiatrists want. They need that to have the clinical diagnosis. Yeah.
Even
it was
at this
very
age?
Yes.
Wow.
Because they want to see that it's present in childhood.
Okay. My goodness.
After seeing another gentleman, because after that, he was the same. He only went off the diagnostic notes from the first psychiatrist that I saw. And he was a very prominent ADHD specialist. And sees lots of, people, and amazing. But for me, I just didn't feel listened to, and he didn't understand what it's like for a mum, particularly with, kids who are also neurodivergent and all of that. He just didn't seem to understand the challenges of that. So I saw another one and he just went off the first one and again gave me another script of something else. And it was just such a waste of time. And more was like, it's in your head, it's depression, it's this. And of course, those diagnoses matter. I'm not at all, but I knew that's what I didn't have. That's not I know they're there, but it's not the underlying cause. The ADHD is. So I finally found a lady psychiatrist and she listened, felt validated, had a couple of sessions with her. She spoke to my elder sister who is a teacher who, deals with lots of kids and, helps with their diagnosis. And it was my sister, and rang my mum too. But mum was like, oh, no, there's nothing wrong. She could always do this. And she, danced when she was 3 and, I don't know. And it was like, oh, my God. But my sister was the one who was like, yeah, she always struggled. She doesn't finish things, everything, and nothing gets done. And it was from that's when I was able to get the official diagnosis.
Yeah, wow.
And it was validating. It really, truly is. Finally, of all of these years of either trying to fit in, I couldn't do the shame. We're so lucky in a lot of ways now with school. Kids, there's, independent, learning plans, and kids can work at their either own level or there's different ways that kids learn.
Yeah.
But back in when I was at school, there was only one way and that was it. And if you didn't learn, you were either in what they had the special schools then or, that was it.
Yeah.
You got literally hit over the knuckles or, there was the feather duster when I was at school. So that even being in class, that trauma of like, oh my God, you don't want to get hit because you couldn't do the work. So you would sneakily try to copy the work next to you so you wouldn't get hit. So I was living with the shame of that. I couldn't do things, simple tasks. But in emergency situations or anything like that, I am your go-to person. I am amazing at that. But cleaning the house, a lot of basic things I struggle with.
Okay.
And yeah, it's been very interesting, the process, and it's not an easy one for women to obtain that diagnosis. And it's basically, you're then labeled with the depression, you're labeled with the anxiety.
Yeah.
And yes, they are comorbidities of inattentive ADHD particularly, but it's not the main fundamental.
Yeah.
And that was very eye-opening to see how tricky and difficult it is, and that it's all in your head.
Of course. And what a journey that you've had to go through just to get that diagnosis and that support. And after all these years, finally feel like you can function as a, in a way that, like you said, is like, wow, this is what it's supposed to be like.
That's right.
Yeah. Wow.
And it is, and it's not a magic pill either, taking the medication. Like, you still need to have strategies and tools. I've got to write things down and trying to go. So, but knowing, that my brain thinks outside the box, and, you can actually start to write the things down instead of them being up there. And it's like, I know I've got to do that, but just can't do it. It helps on that side of things.
Absolutely.
And that's amazing. But being able to finish, courses all, I don't like to read, and I would like to read because I'm dyslexic, which again, I didn't know that. But it's so empowering to finally have the empathy for yourself instead of berating and the negative things going around and around in your head, to finally give yourself a bit of slack. Like, that is, it's, I don't want to cry, but it is, when you've talked so awfully to yourself for decades, to finally think, okay, that's the reason why. It is, you can finally let go of all of that emotional baggage and stuff that holds you back in everything.
Yeah. And so in letting that go, let's chat a little bit about EFT. You are an EFT practitioner, but I assume that you've had to have used it or something in your life before you decided that this is something that I want to go and learn. So can you talk me through how you were introduced to tapping?
I very much on listening to, intuitive and gut feelings, things like that. Never used to be, but along the journey of wellness and trying to find techniques to calm, because having an autoimmune disease, particularly Hashimoto's, it is triggered by stress, and particularly with the kids, it's like I've had to find ways to, feel calm.
Yeah, of course.
So I was looking at doing hypnotherapy. Seemed to be, it's like, I was following that path and looking at everything as the ADHD brain does, sorting it all out. And then I'd heard of EFT a couple of times, didn't really know what it was. And then it was like the little whisper, look into that, look down EFT. Okay, so I followed the voice, started looking at EFT and all the different courses, and then found one. And I literally signed up with the practitioner course without really knowing anything about EFT.
Okay.
I just knew that was where I was directed to go. That was the next thing for the piece of my puzzle to help. How, I don't know really then why, but I do now. And that's how it basically went. Thrown into the beginner call, and you start doing EFT. It was like, oh my God. But from that moment,
was that during your diagnosis process? Like, was that during that process that you were going through, or was this after you've been through this?
It was actually. I had been on the wait list. Yes. So in the course, you are put into your group, 2 other buddies, your little triad group. And I remember one of the sessions we did, and it was after I had my met with the specialist, and that was huge.
Yeah.
So I remember that at the end, but I didn't have my diagnosis when I first started, but it's the first course that I've actually been able to complete.
Oh, well
in
done.
any time.
And that's
Because you sign
a
up
big
for everything and then
thing.
it's like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a
And
big
that's like,
thing on
but
its
I
own.
hadn't. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
But I
Wow.
completed it. So, it's very interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but I'd been on the wait list to book my appointment.
Yeah.
So
And
that's how I was introduced to EFT.
yeah, right. So when I said earlier, I assume you've used tapping before you became a practitioner. I was way off base, but how do you use?
Well, you think you would, right? But
No, it's amazing. I
do
love
things a
hearing
little bit
people's
differently.
stories. Like you hear some people be like, "Oh, I just I just scrolled past it on Instagram, or I just was Googling things and it popped up." But for some reason, for so many people, especially ones who do go on to become a practitioner, it is this that nudge that like, yeah, we need this. I need this in my life. I'm not sure why yet. I'm not sure exactly what capacity, but I know that I need this. I know for me, I became a practitioner at first purely to help myself, like purely because I was like, oh, well, I'm going to use this because I've had such relief from it. And so I went into the training thinking, oh, this would be a cool thing to take back to my leadership role. Like I never, I didn't go in with that intention. And so I think, you go in and then the plans, they just happen, don't they? So
They
how do you
do.
use tapping? How do you use EFT, with your beautiful ADHD brain? How do you use tapping to support yourself in your day-to-day life? You mentioned also, healing and releasing some of the trauma and the things, the shame and the associations that have come with not having your diagnosis yet. How are you using tapping really specifically, I guess, for your neurodivergent diagnosis?
Good question. It's interesting because it hasn't been like a long time, but it feels like that, how far and how deep I've gone. Like I didn't want to do a lot of inner work beforehand. It was like go to the surface level. It's like, okay, that's enough. But I love going deep, and EFT has been the modality that actually allows me to go deep and in that safe space. Having autoimmune, again, with the thyroid, on a spiritual level, that's, your throat. You don't want to speak up. You don't want to say things. And it's so uncanny when I think about it, because it's like, you push your emotions down all the way through my childhood. Didn't want to speak out, didn't want to say that I couldn't do things, or, I can't, or don't like reading a book, or I can't remember what I just read and then I can tell you what I read. That's, you don't want to share those things. So a lot of those emotions that I've pushed down is all throat. So within the training, it was very much starting that healing of the shame. And it wasn't necessarily then of different, like I need to be organized, or how can I organize myself, or I'm overwhelmed, or I'm, stressed. It was more the events. Particularly there was one when I was in grade 3 with the teacher who had the feather duster back then. And I remember one of those sessions that we did as a student, it was going back then of the shame, and then saying, well, it was lucky you were moving. We were relocating from New South Wales to Queensland, because if we weren't, I would be the one repeating, because I wasn't, very smart or good or anything. And I remember that. And they were my, friends, and that's now my second youngest age. She's in year 3 this year. And I remembered it like it was still yesterday.
Yeah.
And it was like starting to work on those events and taking the triggers out of the shame, the fear of speaking up, the fear, the self-worth, not being able to do or learn things.
Yeah.
So that was probably the start of it, more than now, where it's like, I'm overwhelmed. How can I get out of my head and concentrate? Which is what I can do now. 5-10 minutes, it's like, okay, get in the zone, to start tapping on the points, to just, I'm stressed, I'm feeling it. One of the kids had, a meltdown, or it was, hard. I can just specifically go where I'm needing to go in that moment.
Yeah. Do you use it with your kids?
I think you need to both. I do. I try to. Sometimes I do a bit of surrogate tapping, because they're like, oh, they don't want to do that. But it's like, oh my God. I did when I was training, when I was doing it, I was working on the kids. Particularly my eldest, we would do it in the car. And he was like, oh my God. But they could feel it was working. And that was really cool to see. And I just keep reminding them about, anything else, if you're in a situation, just tap here on your collarbone.
Yeah.
Anything else, just
very calming.
that you can just breathe. Yeah. So sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But I don't like to do tapping without their knowledge, but I have done the surrogate, just like, but I think that's more for me too, to keep me, in a certain situations, to calm me.
Keep your head above water.
Because it is. And as, they're getting older, and you've been their voice and advocate, my 15-year-old daughter was nonverbal until she was 4.5. So I was literally her voice speaking up for her. And as she's grown, she's doing amazing now. She's on gravel and doing all sorts of things. But it's hard as my role changes to step. I need to work on me not having to be there as in that capacity like it was. So that changes. And again, coming back to EFT, it's just always there. It's this amazing thing on the end of our fingertips that we literally can do anytime, anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
In any situation, really. It doesn't have to be the big thing. It can just be, I'm feeling sad. I don't know why I'm feeling sad, but it's just, I just feel something in my body right now that I'm being sensitive to. It's just,
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's literally changed my whole life.
Oh,
I can't,
I love hearing that. Yeah. So as a EFT practitioner, and this I guess could be answered for you or for clients, what is the most unique thing that you would say that you've used tapping for?
There's a lot. There was I was volunteering on a self-help page for people with mandates and things like that, of who have either lost jobs or just life with stress and things like that. So it was helping build my skills up as well. And there was a gentleman that was connected then with me, and he was blind, and he was also neurodivergent. He had autism. And so I was tapping with him on the phone because he couldn't see me anyway. So that was his way of being able to communicate, was on the phone. And that was so interesting, because I've done all sessions face to face, because even whether they're online or in person, it's the same. You can just read facial expressions. You can see just a twinge of the shoulder or something, it just gives you that feedback that there's energy shifting. Where on the phone, I couldn't do that with him. And he was so skeptical. All he wanted to do was just talk, like a counselling session. And that was fine.
It's hard for people to get their head around that sometimes, isn't it?
It is.
It's a really active counselling session.
Yeah. And it was like trying to explain the tapping points, like, we'll just tap here. And it was all too much. So I just literally got him to tap on the collarbone as
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to help ground me. But for him, at the start of the call, he was so like a million miles an hour trying to get everything out, you know, because he was so used to being cut off. Okay, this is it. You know. And by the end, he was calm. He was like, I don't know. I kept tapping. He didn't, because it was just all a bit too like, oh. But he's like, I'm feeling calmer. And you could hear it in his voice that he was calmer. And it still blows me away that however it works, really, it does work.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, that was very cool, I have to say, as a learning as well, but being able to connect that way with him in what he needed, still feel that connection through the phone and feel the energy shift and be able to express what he was feeling and the frustration from his parents and things like that. And he was in his 50s as well. So, you know, for a long time being put in the box of, you know, can't really do things, you know, that kind of thing. So it was, it was amazing.
Do you have for you like a pivotal moment, something that really stands out in terms of a big release? You know, something that you had, and I know you're probably thinking, oh, there's so many now, but is there any big one that really stands out for you?
I've got a few, like there was a few, and it's still a work in progress. Yeah, I mean, it's always tricky. I don't know. There was one personally where I was really little. I was 3 or 4. And I remember back then was with my mum, and we went to see my dad, collected his paycheck, and everything was in cash back then. And we were walking, and I needed to go to the toilet, went to just a public toilet block. This was in Gosford in Sydney. And I still remember it, even though I was little, I still remember, you know, walking through the beautiful garden and all the bricks and had all the flowers there and going to the toilet. So we were there in the cubicle, and I remember sitting on the toilet, and my mum's handbag was stolen under a lady got a hook and then stole the bag and then ran off. And I still remember that.
Wow.
Yeah. And it connected that even now as an adult, never having any money, always not worthy of money, get money, spend it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it was related back to that event that it was my fault. And I kind of cry. I'm not triggered like I was, and I still work on it. But it was very pivotal that it was my fault. You know, all that money for the week had gone. We didn't have then any cash to buy groceries, which was what we were going to do after I went to the toilet.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened next, whether, you know, my mum blamed me. I don't know, but I took it on that it was my fault.
Yeah.
And it was because, you know, if I didn't have to go to the toilet, then we wouldn't be in that situation. She got caught. The bag was took all the money, obviously, but it was that was one big one as well, of seeing it then as an adult. Well, she might have had dependent kids and she was trying to need money and things like that. And she might not have necessarily wanted to do that either, and the onflow that it caused. But as a adult, you can see that, you know, all the rationals, and you can go through it all, and it's
you can logic all you like, but when your emotional child brain is in the conscious mind,
in there,
it
doesn't, and you can still feel that wound. You can transport yourself, and you feel I can feel it rising. And even though, like, it's been brought up a lot, you know, with having 5 kids and everything's rising in the costs at the moment, which is, it's still there and it's still something that I need to still work on. But I'm triggered, and I can talk about that event somewhat without crying, but that was a big one that I remember, of taking on all those emotions and grown up things even then, and carrying it all the way through my whole life, that it was my fault.
It's so amazing how we can go back with EFT into, that inner child work. And there's so many different approaches to doing it as well, but just so phenomenal that tapping can be so powerful to go back in and really help to heal those inner child wounds and help to express the emotion, that needs to be expressed from that inner child, and bring safety to them as well. It's just
totally,
we can use it, for that stress in the present day. And I like to call it like an emotional first aid, like you can use it for when you really need it. But you can also go back and you can go in and you can do that deep healing, and you can revisit those old wounds in a way that you're bringing safety to, and helping your brain to reprocess, how it has initially filed those memories and then made all of these associations, like you said, your whole life. Oh, I'm not worthy of money, all these stories that had come from this one event. Oh, goodness.
I know.
Yeah.
And it is, and being able to learn the technique of EFT is basically like that first aid. You can do it every day, any moment that you need it. And it's incredible. But a lot of those things, I wouldn't have gone as deep without someone holding space for me.
Absolutely.
To go there. And I think that's where EFT again is incredible, when you have that person, practitioner, or whoever that you can connect with, that can hold that space for you and take you there. Because we could do all that first aid work on ourselves, but our body wants to keep us safe. It doesn't want to go and relive all those, because we are transported right back there.
Yeah.
And it takes courage, doesn't it, to want to go there.
Absolutely, it does, especially when if you've been through experiences. I know for me, I had a lot of, like clinical psychology and other treatments before I moved into alternative therapies. And what always really put me off was the fact that when I'd be talking about something, I would have those fear responses in my body. And that would then lead to more fear responses after I left. And I just had no way to self-regulate afterwards. And I think for so many people that I know of, they go and they don't want to go and feel these feelings.
That's right. That's right. And that's exactly, when I think about that, when I was having my initial consult with my psychiatrist for the first time, that's exactly where I was. And I, mentioned about EFT and that I had done all this stuff. And he was like, well, basically poo-hooing it, and there's no science in that, and it's, that can't help, blah, 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 which then, more response.
Sorry.
If I had started doing EFT in there, maybe he would have locked me up there and then, who knows, but it would have helped calm the fight or flight response, because that's initially what I went straight into, because it was like I could feel the barriers coming up of all that fear. And being able to open up to someone, particularly if you're going through ADHD diagnosis, you're already putting yourself out there anyway, that it's like, I feel this is what it is. And then when you're getting that rejection, like, oh no, it is that protective barrier that it's like, the little turd putting their nose, their head out there. It's like, okay, I'm just going to feel my way. I know what it is, but then it's like straight away.
Yeah.
EFT again is just helps us, and I think that's more and more, even psychologists are doing EFT as part of their practice. And I think that is absolutely fabulous because even with COVID and things like that, having that connection and interaction is what we've all missed, being able to talk and connect. And I think, again, with EFT, you can do both. You can tap and not even say anything and just let those stuck emotions come out. And that's amazing. But to be able to tap and keep yourself calm whilst talking, I think that's really where the secret sauce is, because you're hearing it, you're releasing it, you're getting it out. And the more that it can be recognized and, you know, our mainstream can validate that, it's amazing, you know, that's what we all need, because wait lists are huge at the moment.
Absolutely. You know? I apologize. I thought I had muted myself when I had my little coughing fit just before. And then I looked and I'm not muted. So sorry if you're wearing earphones and you're listening to this. I am recovering from a head cold. Yeah, I love how much I love how much evidence is coming out on EFT now. You know, there is new studies being published, what seems like every couple of weeks, you know, showing its efficacy in areas that are normally only traditionally set aside for things like cognitive behavioral therapy and you know, the what they call the gold standard psychological treatments. And EFT is just shining up against all of these treatments. So you know, I love that there is like you tap and you know, you feel something's happening, you know, something's happening, but it's so amazing, particularly as a practitioner, to be able to know that we have this evidence now, this, you know, all of these scientific evidence to show that what we are doing and what we are teaching and what we are facilitating healing with, you know, that there's actually there's real hard evidence there that shows that this is how it's working, this is why it's working, and these are the long-term results that people are finding after using EFT. Yeah, it's phenomenal.
And it's amazing, isn't it? Because that's what, you know, yes, when you see the practitioner hat on, you can see the change in the face from the start to the end. You can see the heaviness just go from your shoulders. You know, it is amazing seeing that.
Yeah.
But also without like it is fantastic seeing that, you know, all the studies done, of course. But on the other side of the coin, where you are struggling and drowning and you need something and you can feel that it's giving you relief, whatever it is, whether it's stress or I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. It's like you don't care whether there's, you know, scientific papers done on it.
Yeah, because it works.
In a way,
it feels
when
good.
You feel it's like I can feel it. Yeah. And it's so different, and it's even it's I don't know, but it's just to be able to know that there's something there that can help in, you know,
absolutely
deal with the stress or, you know, having kids, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So amazing and important.
And something so versatile too, you know, it could be a self-applied self-help tool, something to self-soothe, but also something that you can go deep with in that therapeutic setting as well, you know, something that is so versatile and so effective in areas like trauma and anxiety and phobias. I was having a conversation yesterday with somebody who was talking about their arachnophobia and how one session of tapping had eradicated that for her. Obviously, disclaimer, there's no minimum or maximum, you know, everybody's story is different.
That's right. Everyone's different.
But, you know, I just actually thinking, I just remembered when we were doing our practitioner training, I hope I don't start coughing again, so I've got a tickle. When we're doing our practitioner training, there was a class on cravings, and I turned up to the class and I didn't really read like the prerequisite, and so I didn't bring a thing with me. You're supposed to bring like a food, you know, something that
Mm,
you want to
I
get rid of,
remember that
something, yeah.
one.
So I sat down to the class and I was like, oh, I need something. So I just ran to the cupboard and I grabbed a jar of Nutella. Now I was having like a big scoop of Nutella every single night, every night. The kids would go to bed. I think it
Mm,
was just my, I don't know, it was my treat. It was my release. It
mm,
was my, like I was having a huge
after a
scoop
hard day.
every night. Exactly. And anyway, so I was like, oh, I'll do it with this, not really thinking much of it. I've never been able to have Nutella. Like I loved Nutella, but I must have
Mm,
been ready to give it up. Like I have never been able to have Nutella again.
mm. I was like that. I did it with Coke soft drink. I was drinking, again, like the health on everything else, but that was seemed to be my crux, whether it was the caffeine, I don't know, the sugar. But I did that and I have not been able to have any kind of Coke since I did that tapping
Mm.
workshop on the cravings. It was like, whoa. And even now I think, oh yeah, that nice cold glass of Coke. I can't I just can't do it. And it's
Not the
not that
same.
I'm stopping myself. It's just I don't need it, or I don't it's there's no attachment to it
Yeah.
like there was,
Yeah.
where it was that fix. It's
Mm.
so bizarre.
I know, but just again to show how
But
versatile it can be, you know, for me it was Nutella, for you it's Coke. We've talked about anxiety, we've talked about PTSD, we've talked about supporting a neurodivergent mind. We've talked about all these things.
mm,
You know, how versatile tapping can really be.
and be. And a
Yeah.
lot of times too, when you were talking about the trauma and whatnot, a lot of people don't even think they've got trauma, or they know that, the the event they were in, whether it was a car accident or something, that is what has, caused a lot of things that they're dealing with at the moment, but they don't realize that the connection, or
Mm,
yeah. And that's,
absolutely.
I found so fascinating as well. It's like, you know, you can clients can come in and they start with this, but it takes you on such a
It does,
wild
doesn't
journey that it connects to a
it?
story from wherever. And you don't think it is connected, but then the light bulb, and you can, oh, I remember when blah, blah, blah. And it
Yeah.
is like, oh my God, that
Yeah.
connection. And that's so funny how that takes you on these little winding paths. But, you know, it, it's, yeah, I don't know. We don't know what we've got until it sort of comes out, hey? And you just
Absolutely.
start releasing and letting go, and
Absolutely.
just going with it, being curious and having that open heart, and knowing that you're held and you're safe to explore that,
Mm.
um and just, yeah, go with it to see where it leads you, because your body, if you start to listen to the little whispers and little things that come in tapping, it will let you know why it's coming up, and
Yeah.
it's more times than it's related. So I,
Yeah.
I always find that such a spin out. But again, however it works, it's just, yeah, it is amazing.
Oh, it
So
is. It is. Once you get into that energy side of things, or the things that can come up is just phenomenal, isn't it? I know,
mm,
Nicole, you are a bit like me. You work with multiple modalities when you work with clients. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do, and tell us about the Fem Shed as well, if you
mm,
can?
thank you. It's still coming together like any brain. It's like I've got the big visions, and I've, seen all the bits and pieces, and it's just trying to backtrack and take one step at a time.
Yeah.
But the Fem Shed for me is really a place that I envisaged in supporting other women and carers, particularly who are navigating their neurodivergent
Mm,
journey, whether that's, through their kids, and, the stresses and like, you've got the highs and lows of anything, but even more as a mum, navigating kids with extra challenges. And then more times than not, you probably find out when you start ticking the boxes, it's like, oh my God, I've got that. And then either you have your diagnosis and want to, find, go down that path. But that's really what I envisage the FemShed is, that safe place of online hub as well as in person, just to be able to have a place to connect with other women going through the same thing, because there is so much support, particularly in the neurodivergent world of autism and ADHD, mostly autism. ADHD, I think, for women is now really starting to come out. I think a lot of women are like, oh my God, this is now what I've had. But everything seems to be aimed at the kids, how we can support the kids. The kids go to therapy how many times a week?
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I've seen both sides, with funding and NDIS, how that can help. But if you're burnt out as a mum, how are you going to even get your kids to, to therapies or, I always found if I'm calm, the kids are calm. Everything flows as a family, still chaotic, but that it's huge. So that's where I'm feeling, the FemShed will take hold. It's very much that supportive area of being seen, being validated, being heard, and being supported amongst other women who just, you don't have to say I'm sorry or that look of empathy. You just know that they get it. Everyone's journey is very different. All kids are, and all different parts, some non-verbal, verbal, wherever. There's all a struggle, and no journey is bigger or less than someone else's. But being held and being seen, it's such a lonely place sometimes, being an additional parent, even within your own family. Like, again, it's so much the support now, but back then it was like my kids, all they were seeing and what I was told is like, oh, they just need a good smack. Or, going out shopping, if, Charlotte, she's now 15, having a meltdown of something because she was nonverbal when she was still 4.5. It's like people, the looks they would give you, not of only a kid, how naughty they were, but you as a parent, that questioning your parenting side that, you can't even control. There is so much pressure, trying to do it all, be it all for your kids. And it's just exhausting. So
the
I've still got it in
FemShed is a
here,
safe space for somebody to just be, to be held, to be safe, to just be.
Yeah. And then do a bit of tapping to just have those technique to be able to do that first aid on yourself, when everything is too much, even when, you're hiding in the toilet for a bit of 5 minutes peace and it's still banging on the door, like, it's just even that, to be able to just sit there and just, it's okay. I've got you. That's where I really feel, because if we're happy and we're functioning, it unflows to our whole family. Our kids, then we're the role model for our kids. If we tap, then they're seeing that and they can see, instead of, like, particularly at the start of, I had the mask on. I've got it all. I didn't want the kids to know that I was losing it, as you do. But now it's like, I need 5 minutes. I'm, having a tear. They're like, are you crying? Yes. Yeah. It's a bit overwhelming at the moment. And I, say that now where I didn't before. So we're giving them strategies for our kids too.
Absolutely.
Everything that we can do on ourselves, they can see that, oh, it's okay to look after ourselves. It's okay to not have everyday rosy and it's all fine and have the mask on. That we know that we can get whatever tools, smelling some essential oils or going for a walk or doing EFT, having all those little things in our toolbox that we can just grab on those days that we just need someone to hold our hand when, you know, they're either there or not there, but you just know that you're supported no matter what. So
it
that's
sounds like
where
it's
I'm
coming
thinking.
together as a beautiful, sounds like it's going to come together as a beautiful place. Yeah.
Think so. Thank you. I hope so. You know, and again, it's like wait lists are so long at the moment for kids as well as adults. And to be able to have something that we can, you know, help support ourselves and keep calm and have that connection, you know, because we're just so used to that everything's fine, you know, we don't want to show our vulnerability, that we've got it all together. But if we let go and just ask, don't we? People are always there. But we don't want to get to that point, do we, really, to say that it's okay to ask for help or to ask that you need support, you know. I don't know why we do that.
No,
but
I don't know.
And that's for anyone, you know, that's for men, that's for anyone, you know. We just don't want to say that we're struggling.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's got to change, because that's not what we want out for our kids. You know,
I completely
we want
agree.
them to be able to verbalize or ask or just need a hug or something, you know. So everything that we do on us, it impacts for the kids too, and they see that. And that's what we want. We want our kids to be able to have, you know, be resilient in this world. Crazy world.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, because we're not going to be there.
Yeah. Nicole, how can people work with you?
So I do one-on-one. I've got limited one-on-ones because you know, around the kids. So I've got that, but I'm also setting up a group membership through the FemShed. So femshed.com.au. They can reach me that way, and it's just a low-cost membership that, in a private Facebook page that we can tap and do other bits and pieces as well. Just to have that, you know, area that people can come in different ways and however they need support.
Amazing. Oh, thank you so much, Nicole, for coming on today and for
Thank
being so
you.
open and vulnerable and sharing so much of what you've been through. It's really been an honor to listen to your story, and I know that so many people listening will get so much out of what you've shared today.
Oh, and thank you, you know, so much for holding the space for me. So really, validate that. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks.